welcome back to the AM, the Alternative Muse. I'm your host, Juliana Leach. Today we're going to be talking with Hailey West, who's the author of The Desert's Echo. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on my podcast.
Oh, I'm so honored you even asked me. I was so happy when you messaged me about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been following your work for a little while. I haven't had a chance to read The Desert's Echo, but I've been looking at it, and I think I want to definitely read it.
Yeah, you definitely should do that.
Is it what like supports you the most when I buy it through Amazon, or do you have like another way that you get it?
Amazon's my main supporter.
Okay.
Amazon's like my best friend when it comes to my writing. Yeah.
So now it's been a while, and I don't know if I remember this correctly, but do you have a sequel to The Desert's Echo?
I have a sequel coming out.
Coming
it's
out.
still
Okay.
in the process. Yes.
And what's it called?
It's called The Desert's Cries.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you care to tell me a little bit about, like, for those who haven't read, just a little bit about the first book?
Yeah, let's see. The Desert Echo, I kind of started it when I came back from visiting California. And I've always been just very intrigued by the desert, like Arizona. And I grew up watching Westerns, so I think it was like the atmosphere of the cowboys and the horses and just everything about it, the aesthetic of it, really. And so it's about a young girl named Bella Days, and she loses her mother to suicide, which is something I think that needs to be talked about because it happens so much. And it's kind of about her trying to figure out like why and the story in the background. And it comes into play with these men named the Ricardos. You gotta have the bad guys in there. And they kind of come into play. Her mother love with one of the Ricardos, and he kind of is tied to what tragically happened to her mother, pretty much. I think that people can have a lot to do with us mentally, like the people we're involved with, and it's kind of like that, kind of a love story, but not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like a semi love story, but it's tragic.
All right. So, you were inspired by, like, your trip out there?
I was. I actually heard a story about I don't know if this is fictional or true. It was just kind of hearsay. It was about a Native American man and his tribe. He fell in love with a gypsy woman that had came traveling through the desert, and they were forbidden to be together. And they ended up sadly killing. He killed himself, and then she killed herself. And it's kind of like people said that they haunt the desert, but if you know, it could be fiction or real. Who knows? It was set in the 1800s, so that definitely kind of inspired me.
All right. And where does the I read like a little magazine article online that said that your book takes place in Jerome,
Yes, well, sort of.
sort of.
I was kind of struck. Also read a story of the 1800s that was set in Jerome, Arizona, and Jerome's kind of like a very exotic place. And there's a lot of musicians and writers there. I think we kind of just take to certain areas. And I was just, I don't know. Yeah, Jerome definitely inspired a lot of the book and the atmosphere of it.
No, for sure. I went out to Jerome, Arizona last year, and it is one of my favorite towns that I've ever been to.
Really?
So when
Yeah,
Yeah, so when I heard about when I read that, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have to ask her about that because it is this gorgeous little old copper mining town, and even just the way that the town is set up with that pretty kind of cascade setup
yes.
all the way up to the top with the hotel. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, it was. There's actually an artist. Her name's Zilla Day. A lot of people have not heard of her, but I'm very fond of her music, and I'm pretty sure that she was living out there, and she kind of wrote a song about it. And I actually listened to her music while I wrote The Desert's Echo. She's really cool.
So when you're writing like that, do you find yourself inspired by music and things like that?
I do. I think music is. It should be. A lot of people think that writers are my inspiration, but it's actually like old music. Definitely, music is a big play.
So, would you care to go into a little bit of your process when it comes to maybe being inspired by music and then taking that to the next step of writing something that's your own creation?
I think that it's like, I think a certain type of music can, it kind of like, you're listening to yourself. Like to me, it's like folk music, like storytelling music. And I think a lot of songs inspire me because I just love folk music. It's just the storytelling of it. And I think that it's really deep. And I think we need more of it in this generation because I don't know. I feel like the music now is just not like as inspirational. And I think that as everybody, an artist, a musician, a writer, I think eventually we all come together in that same circle. And I think we all inspire each other from something that we wrote or sung, anything. And I think people themselves are a big inspiration to me. And there's a lot of old musicians from the 70s that their personalities and their words and who they were is definitely something that's inspired me in life.
Yeah. No, for sure. I definitely agree with that. There's a lot of artists that are inspired by all different types of mediums and everything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when did you really start discovering yourself as a writer?
You know, I've always felt like, even as a young girl, as a writer, because I was kind of like, I wouldn't say the odd kid out, but I definitely felt like I wasn't like cut the mold when it comes to groups and stuff. Obviously, I was different, and writing poetry and just writing in general kind of helped me come into who I am and be proud of who I am. And I actually started writing really in the eighth grade after we read a book called The Outsiders by C. Hinton. You may have heard of it. And my English teacher, she was a big part in me pursuing that because after we read that book, I found out the woman who wrote it, she actually became an author at a young age. And I was just like, okay, if she can do it, I can do it. So I think it was that book and my English teacher that definitely kind of made me kind of clicked in my head that I should be a writer and I need to kind of pursue it no matter what it comes to.
Awesome. So, I mean, can you tell me anything about the sequel that's coming up?
Yes, I can. The Desert's Cries, like I said from the beginning, Abella, she kind of goes back to her home in the desert in Arizona, and her father, obviously, very not the same after the death of her mother. And she kind of ties into the Ricardos, and a lot of people are like, she shouldn't have anything to do with them, really. And it's kind of about like being forbidden from somebody. So the Desert's Cries is going to do a flashback of how her mother fell in love with one of the Ricardos and what actually happened and kind of like the dark magic around it. There's a lot of like gypsy storytelling and Native American rituals in the new one. So it's kind of like a blast from the past.
Hmm. So, when it comes to writing about those rituals, are they based off of like research and history that you've done of actual rituals that were done?
Yes, and I think a lot of it was kind of my ancestry. I come from my mother on her side was Native American, and it was Aztec. Actually, it's a kind of a different tribe. And then actually on my dad's side was a little bit of Cherokee, and I think I was the only one that kind of like tapped into that. A lot of people just kind of let their ancestry go and are like whatever. But I think at a young age I actually tapped into that side and kind of I was just very proud of the ancestry and what they did and who they were in their culture because it was taken away from them so fast. So I definitely history plays a big part in my writing for sure.
So, I mean, and you do that for your job, don't you? Like
I do on the side. I like do historical articles and I kind of pull like historical documents. It's really awesome. I just really am passionate about history anyway, so I definitely like writing about it.
yeah. So, how do you go about learning? I mean, let me try that again. I've done some writing myself, but not a lot, or not a lot of fiction writing.
Right.
But when I was writing, it was something that I wanted things to be historically accurate when I was writing something that was taking place in a certain time period, or if they were doing something particular. So, like, talking back about the rituals that you're writing about,
Yeah.
how do you like where do you start in researching those to make sure that it's accurate?
Well, I go to just different. You got to really do your research because, like you said, some of it is just full of lies, and you don't want to offend the people that actually come from that. And me, I don't want to disrespect any of the Native American ancestry on my side, even as someone that comes from it. So I learned a lot from older people that come from there, and then like I said, I do a lot of research, but it takes so long to read on it and make sure that you're getting everything right. It just depends on where you're getting your sources from. And I think a lot of it, honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with kind of, even if you're not from, say, that tribe or that, type of life, I think everyone should kind of explore something that they think, they would be passionate about and kind of play around with it, because we're all different and it all takes all kinds of kind to make the world go round. And I think it's important for us all to learn each other and our own history.
No, I like that a lot. I agree. I think it's a shame that some people aren't as passionate, or maybe just don't care a lot about like history and where their families come from and how everything is connected like that.
It is. It's and I think that it's like from myself, a lot of people think it's funny or they like to make fun of it or you know, and it's kind of hard growing up like that because a lot of people kind of mock it. And it's important for us to kind of carry it on. Don't let it die. Just keep doing it. And if you're writing it in your music or if you're writing about it or if you're just doing it yourself.
So how old were you when you first went to like out west?
Well, we went through California. My mom's from California.
Okay.
And we took a big trip when I was like 16, just like traveling all the way through. And we went to like Oregon, San Francisco, Apple Valley, California. That's actually the front of my book, The Desert's Echo, is Apple Valley. And a lot of people think there's nothing out there, which there isn't. But to me, it was stunning. Like I get a lot of inspiration from little places where there's kind of no like life, I guess. It's just like nature. So
Yeah. Did you grow up predominantly in Kentucky?
I did. I'm from Pikeville, yeah. My dad is a Kentucky boy, and my mom came here at a young age. But I think it's really weird to people because there's so many diversity in my family, and I'm just I just kind of own it and proud of all of it. And I kind of try to explore both sides. But I think California is comes a big play in my life because I feel like I take a lot of like style and inspiration from there more so than I do here. You know?
Yeah. Growing up predominantly in Kentucky, but then being able to take that big trip out west. I mean, was it a very like spiritual awakening situation for you?
Yes, big time. It was I think I finally started coming into like being proud of who I am and like learning that there's like a lot of different stuff out there because you grow up in a small town, you kind of like I loved growing up in a small town, but you kind of don't see like with me, I went to a small school and I was like kind of the only girl that looked like I did and I thought there was something wrong with that. You know what I mean? And going out there, it was seeing that I was like, oh wow, there's all kinds of different stuff. And seeing my family out there and getting to know them more, it definitely woke me up. And I was like, hey, listen, Hailey, you need to kind of own who you are.
Do you dabble into anything else creatively for yourself outside of writing?
No. I think that besides like working on history documents, I think writing is about the only thing. Well, of course, there's horse riding. I'm definitely passionate about it, but it's horses, history, and riding when it comes to me. That's pretty much all you get.
What are some of your favorite historical topics that you like to write about?
Of the Wild West. I'm just such a big. I don't know. I think it was like I said. I grew up watching it, and all of my uncles they're just kind of like outlaws. Like they wear the cowboy hats and the vest, and they ride horses. And my dad, he was a big history guru. Like he kind of embedded it in my head. So I spent a lot of time like watching westerns with my dad instead of being a normal kid.
What's your favorite Western, just for fun?
I think it would have to be the High Chaparral. That's probably the biggest inspiration when it comes to my writing was the High Chaparral.
What was it about that inspired you?
Well, it was in Arizona. It was set in Arizona. It was actually instead of I feel like a lot of these spaghetti westerns kind of again mock the Native American culture, and of course the Indian's the bad guy, and whatever. And but the High Chaparral was actually where it was set in Arizona in such an exotic place. It had a lot of like Hispanics and like a diversity of people in a good light. So you got to see like the Hispanic culture of the West, and then you got the Native Americans, and I think it was that I really enjoyed seeing like everybody's story when it came to that.
Oh, do you ever see yourself like moving out west?
Honestly, like as someone who's so in love with it, I really like I get torn because I do love Kentucky. Like I'm here, me and my husband's here, and we kind of got a happy little life in Kentucky. But I mean, you never know, right? You never know what happens in the future. I mean, to me, you can't really predict it. But I think as far as that goes, I'll kind of just be traveling out there a lot.
To Arizona, especially.
Oh yeah, definitely.
What are some of your other places that you've been to in Arizona? Some of your favorites?
I honestly have not really traveled that much as far as that goes. It was kind of just like reading about it and stuff. But honestly, the biggest places I probably was in California, like traveling through there. Sadly, I've not got to explore a whole lot yet. But hey, I mean, I'm just 22, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 22 as well. We just took one trip out there. It was last winter, and
Uh-huh.
we drove to meet up with our buddy in Utah. And we took a whole week and we went down to Arizona, over to New Mexico, up to Colorado, and then back to Utah. And we did like a big circle for the whole week.
That's awesome.
So we got to see, and that's why I was so excited because Jerome and Arizona were the highlight for me because as a young girl, I also had a very romanticized idea of what Arizona would be. And
Really?
and it totally did not disappoint when I got there. It was that, I mean, just the geography is just magnificent and vast and it's gorgeous. But Arizona just had this really big impact on me when I got there because it was everything that I kind of imagined it would be as a little girl.
Right.
And so we went to Sedona and Flagstaff and Phoenix.
Wow. So you got to go all over the place, really.
Yeah, we stopped at so many cities. We went to Farmington, New Mexico. That was the one we kind of were. It was very quick. It was kind of like we stopped there and then we went on to Colorado. We went to Durango and
Wow.
a couple other little mountain towns and then like Grand Junction and then back into Bullfrog, Utah. So,
That's one place my husband was talking about was Colorado. I really would love to go out there.
yeah, it's really cool. I had some crazy experiences in Colorado that were just kind of funny if you wanted to hear one.
Yeah.
Sure. So we were in Durango, Colorado, and we were just we went to like a little chocolate shop and like a little coffee shop. It was all homemade, really sweet. And I was looking to maybe get a little cartilage piercing. And so I'm like, oh, you know, there's this little, conveniently, this little sign that was like, you know, piercings, they were offering a sale. And so I'm like, okay, let's go up there. And so we get up there, and to be honest, it looked a little sketchy. So I go up there, and I was asking about price, and the guy, he was talking to me, and he's like, well, you know, our piercer, she's like moving some stuff out of her apartment, but you know, if you want to sign the papers, I could just knock it out for you real quick. And I'm like, maybe not. And so as I'm kind of standing there talking to my my buddies, thinking about it, but also like, I don't know about this, this guy brings out a container with a Mojave green rattlesnake in it.
Oh my God, I know.
I know. And I don't have a problem with snakes. I don't have a problem with rattlesnakes or anything. But they're not pets, and they don't have a I think you got to have a license for that kind of snake. You can't, you know, so needless to say, I didn't get the piercing, but that was a very strange experience.
I would definitely have ran out. I do not like snakes. That is one thing I do not like.
But yeah, so, I mean, you got that in Colorado.
Well, I honestly, or like, I just always, I don't know why I always thought I would love to go, but you know, a lot of people don't really have anything bad to say about it. Oh. I also thought I always wanted to go to Oregon. When we went, I really enjoyed it, but on the way there, it was very strange trip. A lot of pit stops we made, and it was just like kind of like in the middle of nowhere, I guess. And a lot of the people just kind of looked at you as if they've never seen like humans before. It was very odd.
What time of year did you go?
Gosh, I can't even remember. It's been so long ago. I was like 15, I think, when we went out there. And because my uncle actually lived out there. He moved out there, but he don't live there no more. And we was just traveling in there, and it was just we kind of took a different route, like a longer, you know, way to go. And it was just very odd, I have to say. Like, I'm not the one to judge anybody or say anything bad about anybody, but it was very a weird experience. I don't know if it was where it was like nobody really out there, and it was just kind of like a little group of people, and they, you know, probably didn't like tourists, but they were not nice at all.
Got it. I mean, that was just something strange that happened in Colorado, but there was a lot of good too that we got to see and do, especially with, I just love visiting all the little different shops and stuff in little towns.
Yeah.
There was a really cute bookstore that had it was like out of a movie, you know, like you've got the really tall ladder that has the books all the way around the top. So that was really neat.
Yeah, that's definitely somewhere I'm going to go. I'm definitely putting that on my list.
Yeah. Durango is cool, and Grand Junction is pretty cool. Also driving through Denver was pretty crazy, because we arrived, so it was me and my husband, and we drove 28 hours straight, alternating back and forth. And when we hit Denver, it was night. And so those hills are just they're the mountains. They're literal mountains. We've got hills here, but they've got mountains. And they were just hairpin turns, and it was just really cool. We ended up getting stuck in Denver for 2 days, or not in Denver, in Colorado. It was like outside of Denver, because had we just left a little bit earlier or a little bit later, we would have missed the snowstorm, but we didn't. We were like right in the center of it, so when we were trying to get back home, we ended up losing our momentum coming down a hill and got stuck on the interstate there. So we had to get a tow, and we had to stay for 2 days until the snow cleared off enough so that we could leave.
Well, that was experience, though. At least you can have it as a memory, you know?
Oh, for sure. It was one of the higher points in Colorado, so I ended up getting altitude sickness. But, I mean, it was a crazy, funny experience looking back on it now. But I was definitely ready to be home after that. Like, when I got back into Kentucky, I was like, I can't believe we made it.
I am like, I love traveling, but when I come home, there's just something that washes over me. It's like, oh God, I don't know. A lot of people like leave Kentucky, but I love it. Like, I think I'll always love it regardless.
Yeah. All right. So, got sidetracked. So what would you say, like, we've talked a lot about different inspirations as far as like, places and westerns and music, but what else do you find yourself inspired by when it comes to writing or even like, I'll take it this way. One of my favorite things when I was fiction writing was character development.
Uh huh.
Like, what do you do for character development to make sure that you have like a really well-rounded three-dimensional character?
Like the make sure you got a really good person, like in the front, right?
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, to me, I really, like I said, I pull from people. Like you, I could like be studying you right now and just get a vibe, and kind of put you into a character. Or I used to like go to the coffee shop a lot, and I'd like to sit and watch people and just be like a guy walking down the street smoking a cigarette, and I'm like, he'd be a good Jimmy. Or like, I wonder what his story is. And a lot of people think it's weird. They're like, well, you study people too much. And I'm like, no, I just kind of like pull from everybody. Like, I really love people's stories, and I really love talking to people, and I'm always the type of person just to get a vibe. And I'm like, okay, after I talk to them, I'm gonna have to go write something. Like, I'm gonna have to go come up with something for a chapter or a short story, just anything.
So do you take notes, or do you journal about different aspects of people that you see that you might want to use for a character later?
Well, I hate to say this, I'm such a messy writer. Like, but if I get an inspiration, I have to write it down. Like, even if it's in my phone, like, I gotta pull my notes up, and I gotta be like, if it's a sentence, and I kind of, that's why it takes my editor so long. And she's like, Hailey, it's all over the place, but I have to write it down then, or I just will completely forget about it. I have to have it. And then eventually, even if it's not for a story I'm writing, I'll just restart another one. I'm so bad to restart like multiple different stories.
So have you dabbled also in writing short stories?
Oh yeah, I'm a big short story writer. Wattpad, that app that you can read on, they had a lot of my short stories on there. I actually took them down to kind of redo. I'm also bad for that. I feel like as you get older, you kind of develop into a better writer, and I'm like, well, maybe I should rewrite that. So I've published short stories on multiple different websites, just so people can kind of get something out of it.
Yeah. So, what's one of your favorite characters that you've created?
Oh, that's hard. I think my favorite was Abella from the Desert Echo, because honestly, she's a lot like me. And it's not that I sat down and was like, oh, I'm going to make her be like me. I think it was just kind of a spiritual awakening at the time of coming into who I was. And I don't know, it was it was a different time in my life when I wrote the Desert Echo.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Abella was definitely my favorite, because she's very free spirited.
How old were you when you wrote that one? That book?
I was like 16.
And you're 22 now. I mean, have
Yeah,
you felt that character grow with you?
I have. I feel like she's with me all the time, and that might sound weird to some people, but I feel like the sequel, I feel like there'll probably multiple different books to this, because I can just keep adding on with her, because the first story, The Desert Echo, is actually not a really long book. And I did that on purpose. So I could write a sequel. And a lot of people didn't get like her or her mother's background. Like, they did, but not like the whole depth of it. And like I said, I did that on purpose so I could keep writing.
No, I think that's really neat, the idea of growing with a character. And I mean, do you find that as you develop new traits or new thoughts or perspectives, do you see yourself modifying that for the character, or do you see her mimicking those?
I think I do, and then like I think it's something for other characters for me to create other people. You know, like the first book I ever wrote was called Tomorrow's Dreams, and I'm still not published it because I feel like it's my baby, and I keep adding more to it, and because it's more about my life and the people that I've met in my life, and I definitely have a lot of characters in that book. And I feel like as I go through life, I keep adding on to it too. I think I have like just certain stories of mine that I add to more than the others, if that makes sense.
Hmm. It's really it's really interesting just to think about having like all these different characters and working with them and things like that. Um, oh, go on.
It can be very emotional too, though, because it's like you keep a lot of weight on your shoulders as a writer, you know?
Weight from the characters of their lives.
Yeah, and because so much of my writing is from other people, you know?
You empathizing with the people that you bring their stories into your characters.
Yeah, it kind of like does a flashback for me, you know?
Hmm. Do you think that having that emotional weight advances the story and helps you show that differently?
Yeah, and I think the more emotional the story, the better because there's so many people out there experiencing different things. And if they pick up that book and they read it and it's kind of got a lot of heart into it, you know, they get something out of it. It's kind of like a comfort. That's the way books are for me, anyways. I mean, everybody's different. I mean, some people do that with music, but, you know, I kind of want people to see that it's got a lot of heart in the writing.
Yeah. Was there a particular book that is one of your favorites that really displays that for you?
The Outsiders
The
and
Outsiders?
by C. Hinton, yeah, that one for sure.
What was it about that book in particular that shows that emotional weight for you?
Well, like when I was reading it, the main character, I don't know if you've ever read it. Have you ever read
Yeah.
The Outsiders? Yeah. I think it was like the beginning, like Pony Boy and all of his family, like their bonds. And at the time when I was reading it in eighth grade, you kind of like, you go through adolescence. And that book was just like so, I feel like Pony Boy was different from his group. And that's the way I felt. So it was just something that I kind of related to that character on, you know?
Yeah. Right. Is there anything that you'd like to say or add that I haven't asked you about?
No, I think no, not really. I think I've said, you know, mostly what, you know, I would like to share with you.
All right. Well, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much. It was you.